Well, good evening, listeners. You're listening to Lament of Hope blog and podcast. I'm really excited today. I'm speaking with Francine Rivers. She's a very acclaimed author, has written several books. Redeeming Love is one of her most popular novels. Was recently made into a movie, I think just last summer. Um, and Francine is kind enough to take the time to talk with me. Thank you again for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here.
Well, Francine, I wanted to start out because reading your testimony on your website, you talk about the fact that you were really afraid about sharing your Christian faith, especially in
Mhm.
your writing. Um, what is something that you think, because later on in the testimony you share too, that sharing over the years has actually helped you to grow in that passion to actually want people to come to know the Lord for your stories. And that each story has kind of been a personal journey of a question you've asked the Lord, and then kind
Mhm.
of throughout the novel come to a conclusion. Um, what book do you think was the hardest to write? Because I would find that would be so vulnerable. Was there a personal, question you were asking the Lord in one of your novels that you were really either struggling to find the answer or you weren't sure you found it?
Well, excuse me, my throat is very dry today for some reason, but the most difficult book I ever had to write was The Atonement Child because it dealt with an abortion that I had had in my college years.
Hmm.
And it was something that haunted me because when I got married, our first baby, we lost our first baby, and then we had a child, lost another one, had a child, lost another one through miscarriages. And I felt like at that time I wasn't a Christian, but I felt like God was taking back what I had taken from him. So when I wrote The Atonement Child, I was really exploring the whole issue about forgiveness. And I think what I discovered in the writing of that book is that I had held on to it. It wasn't that God hadn't forgiven me, it was that I couldn't lay it down. I couldn't forgive myself. I'm so okay if I'm sipping hot tea periodically.
Oh yeah, no, please do. No problem at all. I'm sorry your voice is struggling. Um, when did you forgive yourself for the abortion, you think?
After that book,
Yeah?
yeah, that book was really, I went to the pregnancy counseling center to train as a counselor. And during the training of the course, um, they were talking about the number of babies that have died. And I kept thinking about the women. Do the women feel the same way I do? Because you keep that guilt and that shame inside you, I think. I raised my hand and I said, well, there's another reason I'm here and I'm dealing with this issue. And they said, well, you need to be in the post-abortion class because it is like PTSD. You know, you carry some of that trauma with you.
Yeah.
Um, so while I was writing the book, I was involved at the PCC and I was going through that class. Um, and I was also dealing with my mother had had a therapeutic abortion. So when I was talking to her about writing this book, she confessed to me and she was crying, and it had been 44 years before
Oh
she had
wow.
tuberculosis. So the story of Dinah is not about me, it's Hannah is my story, and Evie is my mother's story.
Wow.
So, and I wanted to deal with the heavy duty a rape victim who gets pregnant because I think a lot of people feel that, well, that's excusable. That's okay to do that. But it's another violent act on that woman for an abortion to be pushed that way. And very often women are pushed that way. And then they're not allowed to grieve because it's okay. It's not really a child. A lot of people don't believe it's a child, but I think in your heart and your soul, you know it is.
Yeah. When you're talking about therapeutic abortion, what does that mean?
Well, she had tuberculosis, and the doctor felt that she would not survive
Oh,
the
okay.
pregnancy. And my dad and the doctor talked, and then they talked my mother into an abortion that she didn't really want to have. And it was in a hospital situation with a
Hmm.
medical doctor doing it.
Oh, that
But she
must
was
have,
still thinking about it years later. And she said, when my father died, just before he died, he said to her, I wonder if we made the right decision. And
hmm,
they hadn't talked about it in all those years, but she knew exactly what he was talking about.
yeah.
So my dad never got over it either. They knew it was a little boy.
And when you had an abortion, was it a similar story to your mom, a health concern, or
No, no, it was a matter of covering one sin with another, I would say, because
yeah,
I was in college and it was in the 60s and free love and all that. Well, there's always a cost.
yeah.
There's always a cost. And that was the cost for me.
Was your was the man you were with at the time supportive of your decision, or was he gone kind of
No,
thing?
no. He basically backed out and said, want nothing to do with you or it.
Hmm. That must have been really painful.
Yeah, painful. And it also made me very angry, to carry
Angry,
some of that anger. Well,
angry at
angry
him.
that, yeah, and just myself, how did I get myself into this situation?
So
Because the pill was available, but I think a lot of people think it's not going to happen to me.
right, right.
And they don't take the precautions and they live a promiscuous lifestyle. And there's a cost to that too.
Well, so
Not always in not
that
always in human life, but when we're not made to have multiple relationships, we're made to cleave to one another.
yeah,
And when you're jumping from one person to the next, it does damage to your soul, I think, and your heart.
yeah. Because you're exposing it to so much hurt and you're being
Yeah,
vulnerable over and over again.
yeah,
Do you, I mean, the book must have been very therapeutic then for you.
yeah. It was very difficult to write, but it was also therapeutic. And Rick and I talked about it, and he did not want me to go public with the story of my abortion, and because he felt that people would persecute me at the time. I'm writing a Christian story. I'm writing from a Christian point of view, and he felt like the general market audience would just be after me for being pro-life. And on the other hand, the church people would be after me because I had an abortion. And, none of that proved to be true. I remember that the editors, I'd told my editor in private, what had happened, and I choose to keep it secret. Well, she got called into the board and they wanted to know it. They asked her straight out, has she had an abortion? And she kind of tried to go around it and around. They said, we're asking you a yes or no question. She said, and I wasn't supposed to say, but yes. And they said, well, you tell her we're behind her 100%. That's from a Christian publisher. So
Wow.
it's like all the things that we feared could happen didn't. God just made a way. And it also made me able, except for my voice now, um, it made me able to speak for different pregnancy groups as trying to help raise funds so that they have those services available to women that want to have their children. Because I think women nowadays get channeled into having abortions. Like here in California, they'll fly you in for free, pay your way in, pay for the procedure, pay to send you home. It's sort of, it's big business and they want to keep it going. So
Yeah,
the pregnancy counseling centers are really under a lot, and they're trying to offer the alternative to women, and the alternative is life. Our
yeah.
culture is like they don't they don't see it that way.
Well, it's interesting because I think a lot of the secular world, but also just Christians in general, are under this impression that we are, perfect. We come from stable homes. We understand the Bible really well. We obey everything very well. We don't have any problems. Um, but to be honest, I mean, the majority of believers I have met have had the messiest lives of most people I've ever known. Like their story zigzags. It's not like I started here and I got to this point and everything just boom, did the right things. I
Yeah.
mean, it was just like, even in my own life, it's like dysfunction, 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 Jesus, more dysfunction, Jesus, come back, dysfunction, Jesus. And it's like Christ is that redeemer of the dysfunction, but it doesn't mean that life just always is smooth. And I think that's with your books, even trying to show like redeeming love, like things are just, we're very broken people that need to be
Yeah.
loved, you know?
Yeah. Absolutely. I think every family has dysfunction of
Yeah.
some kind. You know, I mean, we're all sinners. We're all sinners. We all mess up constantly. And it's, thank God for grace. That's the only place to go for grace.
Did you Do you think your abortion was the biggest regret you've had in life up to this point?
Um, yes, but on the other hand, God made it into, he redeems even the things that we do, because it gave me the ability to talk to others about my experience. It's given me the ability to come alongside women that are going through that, or to talk to women who have been through it and share my experience. So God doesn't waste anything. I mean, we can really have a regret and mess up, but he brings something good out of it, you know.
What quality or a characteristic or something you see in yourself that you want to get better in or that really aggravates
How
you?
many ways can I count that? I think I actually think the longer you're a Christian, the more you realize you're a sinner. And the more you're aware of the sin when it's happening, it's like, oh, there I did it again. It's like
Yeah.
it's sin isn't just what we do. It can be a thought process, a pattern that we have that we fall into really easily. It's a discipline to be a Christian, but God understands us, and I think he grows us up. He gives us what we need at the time.
Yeah.
And he's teaching us all along the way. I mean, I'm still a mess in a lot of ways, and I will be until I cross over and I'm in heaven, and then and things will be perfect. Then we'll be like Christ.
What do
But you
you
read about his life, and I would tend to fight back. I would tend to speak out, all those things. And you watch Jesus, and there's that gentle spirit, but that strength, that incredible strength, and that grace, no matter what was thrown at him or done to him, even dying, for us.
what do you think is the messiest part about you right now?
Oh, well, I'm a caregiver. I'm a full-time caregiver for my husband with Parkinson's. And it's struggling to lay myself down, and not have my own expectations about things that I need to do or want to do.
Hmm.
So I think that's part of it, is putting somebody ahead of you on a daily basis and seeing to their needs first. You
What
know,
is it like to live with someone with Parkinson's? Because I have no idea.
well, he has physical um, needs. It's hard because it's a changing thing, but it's also, Parkinson's is not curable.
Right.
And Rick has Parkinson's from being exposed to Agent Orange when he was serving in Vietnam as a Marine. So I mean, he's a strong man, and he doesn't complain, and he doesn't give up. So for me, it's the stress of seeing him trying to do things that he used to be able to do, but he can't do anymore, and it's risky. He has falls and things like that. So it's kind of having that level of stress on you, um, to not want to see somebody that you love hurt or
What
injured in a way that would put him in a convalescent hospital. I think that's the hardest part about it, is watching and trying to protect, getting into that control and protection mode. And control is something that we never really have, but we like to try to grasp it.
Yeah.
That's one of the issues I deal with.
What kind of things has he tried to do that have worried you that you see him
Oh,
doing?
get on a John Deere tractor and mow the equestrian trail behind our house.
Oh dear.
Swim. With Parkinson's, you lose some of your coordination
Yeah.
and your cognitive ability. So he used to be a really good swimmer. He can no longer swim. but he wants to be in the pool. To just go out into the garage because there's steps to get out there, and it's all cement. So he had one fall out there, and we tried for an hour and 15 minutes to get him up. And I said, I have to call the fire department. He didn't want me to call the fire department. I said, I need to call the fire department for a lift, assist, because I couldn't get him up. So things like that. He used to be very active golfing and bowling and all that kind of thing. Well, he can't, biking, he can't do any of that anymore. But in their mind, they sometimes think they can. So
But
it's kind of being diligent in keeping, knowing where he is and what he's doing, but not being overly protective, which at
that,
times I'm sure I am.
well, do you find it hard at times where you wish he was who he used to be? Like what he used to be able to do?
Oh, I think so. But I think he wishes that more than anything because I see him get very depressed and he talks about how your life narrows down. And my life narrows down too because I'm with him. I'm not going to be anywhere else, thankfully. When he was diagnosed, he was on a plane, a business trip, and there was a man that couldn't get up out of his seat. He needed help to get to the bathroom. And Rick helped him. And when he came back, he said he was a veteran and he had Parkinson's. And Rick said Rick had just been diagnosed with Parkinson's.
Oh,
And this
wow.
gentleman said, well, travel now while you can. So we traveled. We took, I think, over 20 trips over the next, 10 years or so. So we saw everything in the world that we wanted to see at a time when he was able to do all that. But he just talks about how he can't drive anymore. He used to love to drive. He can't bike, he can't walk very far, has to use a walker or a wheelchair. So it's that watching that happen to him. And then also it's happening to me at the same time, but in a different way. But I mean, we have fun together. We've been married 55 years and we've known each other since fifth grade. So we're good buddies, good friends too. So this is just a new phase of life that we have to adjust to and grow together in that, work together through it.
Do you ever worry that you'll get sick and not be able to take care of him?
I did get very sick last year in fall, and I remember laying on the couch, and because my prayer has always been, keep me healthy as long as he needs me, and then take me home. I don't care. And I remember I was sick for about a month, and I lost like 20 pounds. I just couldn't eat. You know, I don't know what was wrong with me, but my daughter came up and took over. And they wanted us to, well, they still want us to move in with them, but we're not ready yet. But she basically came and she started, working with me, and I was able to get a little bit down, and then pretty soon I was back on my feet again. But during that time of being that sick, I realized that, God doesn't need me to be here. He'll take care of Rick if I'm not here. And that was really a wake up call for me that you are not in control and I will take care of what needs to be taken care of. It doesn't all depend on you. And that was a hard lesson because you kind of feel like you're in control and you're taking care of it all, and you're not.
How did you come to see that? Was it just by seeing your daughter care for you, or was that, how did
I
that?
think it was just the fact that I couldn't do anything. I couldn't get off the couch and I
Hmm.
couldn't eat. Um, I could barely drink. And I thought I could feel myself kind of spiraling downward. And I came to a point where I just felt very relaxed, like, okay, if this is the way it is, this is the way it is. And I can trust God will take care of Rick. So
Wow.
I
What
think it's a lesson in letting go and not feeling like you have to do it all yourself and be in control. Because it's an illusion to be in control. You're not. Your life can change in a minute, you know.
Well, it's interesting because you've mentioned that theme a couple times about letting go of control. Is that a big reoccurring lesson for you, coming back to
Oh
that?
yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
God's been dealing with me on that for years and probably will continue to because you tend to slip back into things. I didn't become a Christian until I was almost 37. I grew up in a Christian home. But I didn't, you can have a lot of head knowledge, but not heart knowledge. And I didn't really give my life to Christ until I was in my 30s,
Hmm.
my mid late 30s.
Was
And
your
it just,
husband a
no,
Christian? Okay.
no, he was not, he wasn't, he was, his parents, I believe, were Christians because we asked them later on. We wanted to know, are you saved? They were, but they never went to church because um, my mother-in-law had been Lutheran and my father-in-law was Southern Baptist. And we grew up in Pleasanton and there was no Lutheran or Southern Baptist church. So they never went. And they had a cabin up in the mountains. So they'd spend weekends and summers up at the cabin. So Rick never went to church. He never had that experience.
When did
And
he
the
become a Christian?
around the same time I did, because we
Hmm.
moved up from Southern Cal. We had been in churches, we went to churches, but he was even the chairman of a board of trustees in a church, and he wasn't a Christian. And he didn't know, and I didn't know, and they didn't know. And it was a kind of the church where Jesus had left the building, quite a while before that. But we came up to Sebastopol and moved in, and there just happened to be, it was the only house for rent in the town. And there just happened to be two families on either side of us that belonged to a church,
Hmm.
Sebastopol Christian Church, and all they did was they studied the Bible. The pastor would open the book and say, "Here's the historical context. Here's what the scriptures say, and here's what it has to do with you right now. What is it? How does it impact your life?" And that was like, for me, it felt like I'd come home. And I couldn't get Rick to go because he'd had that experience with being chairman of the board of trustees. So I asked the pastor if we could have a Bible study in our home. And he said, sure. But your husband said yes. And that's how we started. We had the Bible study for almost 40 years. We're on hiatus right now. But Rick came to Christ and we were both baptized in May of 1986. So,
Wow.
yeah,
And you're
our
still at
kids
the
were
same
there.
church?
Yeah, we're still in the same church.
Wow.
Yeah, it's changed over the years. Pastors, our first pastor is still a close friend of ours, he and his wife, and Rick, two Ricks, they get together for lunch, every Tuesday, whenever they can. And I mean, we've traveled with them, and then he went to another ministry in Hawaii, and another pastor came, and another pastor, and another. So we've been through about four pastors since then. Um,
So when you were talking about not coming to Christ till 37, but you thought you were a Christian that whole time.
Yeah, I think a lot of Americans think they're Christians just because they were born here. Not true. I mean, it's a choice we have to make, what
When
we
did that kind
believe.
of what clicked for you in that way? Because if you'd been to church so many times, what was like the kind
Yeah,
of thing that was like, I wonder what's wrong. I don't feel like this is that I am saved. How did you get that
yeah. I think it
change?
was desperation because Rick and I were close to getting a divorce at that time. It was probably the toughest time in our lives, our
Hmm.
married lives. And so I was ready to hear the message. I think you have to be ready to hear it. And faith comes from God too. So I don't have any idea why it didn't happen until then,
Yeah.
but it was perfect timing. I've been writing in the general market for a number of years. And after I became a Christian, you think everything, like you were saying earlier, everything's going to be wonderful. All the problems are going to work out. And it was like all this flotsam kept coming up for me. And the first thing that happened is I couldn't write because I think writing had become so important in my life. It was almost an idol. So for 3 years, I couldn't write. I worked with Rick in his business because we came up to Sebastopol to start a family business, aviation business. And I think it took me that long to realize it didn't really matter. I was in love with Jesus by then. I didn't care. I don't need to write. And then as God does, when he's the priority, then we did a home Bible study with our pastor on the minor prophets and came to the book of Hosea. And that was then it was just like God saying, that's the romance I want you to write, because I've been writing steamy historical romances in the general market. And he says, this is the romance I want you to write about my love for you and for people, why I died for you, you know. So that's Redeeming Love. That was my first book that I would say I wrote for Christ
Which is
to
your
make.
best, like
I
in the
think
sense
so.
of most famous.
Yeah, well, and I felt like Jesus was sitting right next to me because I didn't grow up in a life like that. I had no idea what that life would be like. And I think that God just was revealing the things that happened to her and how her thinking patterns and that kind of, because I've had people write to me that have been through that. And I've become involved in, well, we have a foundation now, Redeeming Love Foundation. And all the money from that book has always gone to the Lord's work. But since the movie came out, Holly Caruso, who was DJ Caruso's wife, the director of the movie, she wanted to start a foundation. And we talked about it. And she said, maybe we could start a home for them. I said, you have to have so much knowledge about trauma and how to help. And
Yeah.
I don't have that expertise, and you don't either, but we could support people that do have that kind of expertise. So she is the founder of Redeeming Love Foundation. I'm on the board. So is my daughter-in-law and a number of other people, but we give out grants every quarter to groups that are serving survivors and helping them restore their lives. You know,
Well,
so that's been an amazing experience. Um, but that all that I felt like God just directed all of that. It was like He was revealing angel to me. I saw myself as like Gomer in the book of Hosea, where I was always turning to other things rather than God. Um, but I never experienced what it would be like. And I didn't make the connection of sex trafficking when I was writing the book. I thought it was something that happened years and years ago. And then that's when I started getting letters after the movie came out and saying, how did you know, how I think or what I've been through? It's like, God just revealed it and used the book. So can't take any credit for that. It's based on the book from Hosea. So, and he really kind of told me the story.
did you, what did you think of the movie? Did you like how it turned out?
I did. I wrote the script for one thing, and then DJ and I worked together to tweak it and change a few scenes and things. But we had been trying to make it into a movie for 30 years. And it was actually Holly that read it and then gave it to DJ and said, you have to make a movie out of this. And then I had been frustrated because all the other companies that we'd worked with, they just didn't understand Michael. I always wanted him to ride in and save her at the end. It's like, that's not the point of the story. It's all about God. And so I wrote a script to show what I was looking for. I'm not a script writer. And the gal, it was Cindy Bond and her company, Mission Pictures, and she read the script and she said, "Well, we'll take this script. You know, the script works." But I also helped to have DJ Caruso, who's very knowledgeable in making movies, um, for us to work together. That was really a collaborative effort. So it was fun, and I think he did a great job on it. We got a lot of pushback, primarily from Christians. Um, Unfortunately.
About,
But there was one particular denomination that was very distressed about the scene of the scene between well, it's Angel and Michael when they're consummating their marriage.
oh,
But the
I
gentleman that
I
had it,
have heard that people are very like it's super steamy. Why is this in here?
yeah,
Yeah.
well, and the gentleman that read it and actually had it banned he had never seen the movie or read the book. And I thought it's interesting that
To
that's the
like delete
scene.
comment.
Yeah. Well, and it's I- I was surprised because I thought that they'd have trouble with the 7-year-old child being raped by a grown man. That wasn't the problem. The problem was the steamy love between a married man and woman,
And did
which,
you want to portray that in the film on purpose?
yes, every scene in there, I wrote a blog explaining why we left the scenes in as they were, because it's really, he waited, he wooed her, he married her, and he waited until she was ready. And then it was the two of them loving each other, not a man using a woman as she had been trafficked, and it was just sex. This was love.
And that you
I
were
think
trying to
love is a
show
lot
that
different.
difference. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. He was looking into her eyes. He wasn't looking at her body. He was wanting to connect with her as her, the souls, the hearts together. It's not all about physical.
Well,
But God made us to be physical too. He
well,
made,
oh no, go ahead. Sorry.
yeah, I was going to say, he made marriage to be beautiful in that way too.
Well, this may be even a too personal question for you, and please, feel free to say no, not interested in answering this, but I feel like a lot of Christians, I mean, there's so many books written by Christian authors about helping Christian couples with sex because it's a topic and it's something that Christians really struggle with. And a lot of Christians either aren't enjoying it or it's really a stressor. It's causing people, it's not something that is enjoyed or maybe there's shame with it. Anyway, there's so many different things that I've come across of people's perspectives and a lot of marriages that really struggle in their sex life, even though they're believers, and they're really discouraged by that because they don't understand. Um, for you, I wondered, even since, you had that experience as a young person and then the abortion and then getting married and all those miscarriages. I mean, has sex been a journey for you and your husband? Do you feel like you guys have been able to achieve that intimacy that's kind of portrayed in the film, that's not so much about, like you said, the body as it is? I want to be one with this person. I understand this person. I feel
Yeah.
connected and at peace with this person in my soul.
Yeah.
Um,
I
I
think
mean,
so much of it is about the way different people are raised too. If they're raised to believe that sex is shameful, they're going to have a real hard time adjusting. But that's not the way God created us. I mean, it's like study the Song of Solomon. He made us to enjoy sex as part of our life. And yeah, I think a huge part of it is trust.
yeah.
And I knew I could trust Rick, so I would say we've had an enjoyable married life. That's about as far as I'll go with that one.
Well, is
But
that always the
yeah,
case though?
I think people have to work at it if they have a problem with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to learn from each other too. You have to be willing to talk about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you think you'll ever write a book? And forgive me if maybe you've already put it in somewhere and I haven't seen it, but about your experience, even with your husband and Parkinson's, and maybe creating a
Not at
story that'll kind of capture that, what you're
Yeah,
learning.
not at this point. It's too close. It's
Yeah.
too close. Yeah. And um no, it's a place I don't want to go right now. Yeah.
It could not go
It's
because of the,
just living the day to day and
yeah.
being together. I think this is a very precious time for us because we both know it's advancing. It's not going to get better. And you do what you can to try to hold it steady, try not to let it go advance. But yeah, I mean, I, when our kids come and see us, they can see the difference. I
Yeah.
can't because I'm living it day to day, so I don't notice it so much. But if I look back, I can see the progression. And I just don't like to think about that. Don't want to
Yeah.
go there.
Of
I know where
course.
he'll end up if I don't go first. I mean, there's the thing too. You never know. You might think one person's going to die first and the other one's going to live, but you don't really know which one of us is going to go first. As that sickness for that month taught me, it's like you can't assume you're going to outlive your husband because he has Parkinson's. You may be the first one to go. Um, and it's like, you know, you know where they're going, so that's not the grieving part, I think. It's not being able to be with them.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah,
Well, I was gonna
it's
say
like,
too, I mean, God gives grace for the time, but not
yeah,
before. So it would make
yeah,
sense to me that it's like I don't have the grace yet to go there and talk and
yeah,
get, make a story and kind of, all the way
yeah,
to
no.
the conclusion.
Yeah.
Um, you know, what do is there something you wish you could write about that you haven't done yet? Something you'd like to?
Yeah, I'd like to do a book about mentoring because I think it's really
Yeah.
important to have, yeah, older women coming alongside younger women. I know I've had older friends that have come alongside me over my time as a Christian, and it always seems like the ones that are the happiest and that just shine Jesus have been through horrifying experiences in their life,
I
and yet they
agree.
shine through.
Yeah.
They were shaped and they grew through that in their faith, and I think that is something I'd like to tackle as a book about a woman that mentors a younger woman because she sees in the younger woman what she was like as a younger woman and the pitfalls that she's heading for.
Oh, that's
So
so interesting. Is this like, yes, you will write this, or this is just a thought
too, and it's percolating. Let's just say that in my
percolating? Because
head. Yeah,
boy, that would be so good. I mean, I personally have had mentors in my life, and I don't know what I would do without them.
yeah, yeah. And sometimes it can be a younger person mentoring an older person. It doesn't have to be an age thing, you
That's
know,
true.
because
I
I've learned a lot from younger people. It's like, you know, so
what's something
it's a back and forth.
what's something you've learned? I'd be interested to
Um,
know that because I feel like I don't have much to teach people.
oh, oh golly. Well, I'm in a writers group, so we share our writing, and this one gal is just an awesome poet.
Oh, wow.
And she's also an intervarsity um, missionary on one of the college campuses. So I listen to her and I read her stuff, and I think I'm learning from her. I can help her with writing other kinds of things, like if she wanted to tackle a novel or something like that. But I'm learning a lot of she's a much stronger Christian than I am, and she's, half my age. So it's like, it's not necessarily a chronological thing, that a mentor has to be older. So that would be something I'd want to get in there too.
Do you
I
love
think we,
poetry?
not really. I like certain kinds of poetry, but I don't normally read a lot of poetry. Hers I read because I really enjoy hers. And there's another gal in the group, and she writes poetry too. And her husband passed away from Parkinson's. So she's
Wow.
writing poetry about Parkinson's that really connects with me. It's like a gut punch, when you read it, of what she's experienced. And she's kind of mentoring me, coming alongside me and Rick, and kind of giving us little encouragements and ideas of things that we can do that help, because she's been through it all.
What
So,
what is something that you two do now, you and your husband, that you really look forward to? That's just a moment when you can be together and enjoy something about life.
well, every morning we read together. We do our devotions time together and we pray together. And I think my favorite time is at night. When we go to bed, we have a new bed now because we had a sleigh bed before, but we can't sleep that way anymore. Um, so we have twin beds that raise and lower, and we hold hands. You know,
The whole night through?
we well, not the whole. I don't think the whole night through, but that's when we're getting ready to go to sleep and we're tucked into bed. We hold hands. So it's like,
Oh my
yeah, we're still
gosh.
together.
You're gonna make me cry. That's so sweet. That reminds me,
Yeah,
reminds me of like the I Love Lucy show where they have the two
yeah,
twin beds. Yeah.
yeah,
That's so sweet. Man.
yeah.
Do you have a favorite old show?
A favorite old show. Well, I will tell you, it's hilarious, but I loved Bonanza.
Oh my gosh, me too. I
I
love
absolutely
Bonanza.
love Bonanza, and I had such a crush on Little Joe,
I mean,
Michael
who
Landon.
doesn't? Like Michael
Yeah.
Landon, just
Well,
timeless.
I remember I made a there was a previous movie, The Last Sin Eater, made from my book, and it was made by Michael Landon Jr. and Brian Bird. And I remember when he came up to our house and we're sitting in the living room, and I just started to laugh, and I said, "This is just so out there that I had a crush on your father when I was about 12, and here's his son sitting in my living room and we're talking about making a movie together. I mean, it was anyway, yeah,
That's so cool.
Bonanza.
I know, I loved Bonanza too. That's a good pick for
Yeah,
sure. Well, Francine, I'm so blessed. This has been such a great conversation and encouraging to me to hear your story and to know the ways that you are trusting the Lord. And even you and your husband through a difficult season, you find the good and the beautiful in it, which is really
yeah.
encouraging.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. I hope you have a good night and enjoy your holding hands
Yep,
time.
we will. Sometimes in the morning when, we get up about 5 o'clock in the morning. And sometimes if he wakes up ahead of me and then I start to wake up, he holds my hand again in the morning. So yeah, you go through
Oh,
life together. That's the whole point of being married is, you're taking that journey together, and you through all the different phases that you have because you're both changing too and growing. We're not the same people we were when we got married. Uh,
mhm.
you know,
Well,
and that's
Francine,
part of the
thank
fun.
you.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.